Have you got a client, particularly those ones that have a desk job, who tend to stay bent over a little bit like this? The problem might be in their quads. My name's Beth, and I'm with Cantado Wellness, and I want to talk a little bit today about some techniques that you can use on a client who's got some tight quadriceps muscles. Now, quadriceps is kind of interesting because some people think of quadriceps as one muscle with four different heads, but a lot of people describe it as four different muscles. However, whichever way you look at it, they're a group of muscles and they lay on your anterior thigh. They cross the knee and all of them insert here at the tibial tuberosity. Now, one of them does cross the hip, and that's rectus femoris. And rectus femoris comes from the AIIS, which is that lower part of the ilium that kind of sticks out a bit, crosses down, and then covers over vastus intermedius. Then we have vastus medialis and vastus lateralis. We tend to see trigger points or tender spots right at the crossing point, so beyond the hip joint, in rectus femoris. And then we also tend to see them down here closer to the knee on vastus lateralis. So first thing we're going to do is just kind of soften up all of this tissue. So I like to either use my fist or my flat hands, and I'm just going to go from the knee back towards the hip. I'm going to cover all of this tissue and get it to soften up and relax a bit. Like I said, you can come in with open fists if that feels more comfortable to you. Remember, when we're doing these kind of relaxation, elongation strokes, we want to go from insertion back towards origin. Now, some people like to do this. I feel like this puts a lot of pressure on your wrists, you guys. So I wouldn't do this a whole lot. I would really change my angle and make sure that all of my pressure is pointing in the direction that I want to go in. Otherwise, you're going to end up with too much push onto that wrist joint. Now, another thing is all of these cross the knee. So we're going to have to pay a little bit of attention to the knee, but I don't want you to put direct pressure on the patella. So circular friction around the knee, or some nice elongation strokes that start right above the patella and go all the way along rectus femoris. Now, this is another spot where you could do some muscle stripping. Be careful when you're doing stripping that you don't only do that with your thumb. You can stack fingers and get as deep a pressure with stacked fingers. Here I'm using my index finger and my middle finger, my third digit, to go right between vastus lateralis and rectus femoris. And I can do the same thing over here between vastus medialis and rectus femoris. So we're kind of separating each section of muscle or each muscle from the other. Now, when we get into these points that feel a little tender for our clients, we can just kind of hang out there for a minute and see if that changes the texture of those tender spots. I like to relax my shoulders. I like to just use my leverage and drop in and see if that tissue texture changes. Lots of different kinds of ideas about how long you can sit here, but I think you can stay for about 30 seconds and see if anything changes. Now, we're going to do kind of the same thing down here. If we find any taut bands of tissue, and again, this muscle comes from the back and wraps around. It has an attachment at the trochanter and it goes across the IT band. So it kind of makes a run like this. So I'm going to change my angle a little bit and I'm going to drop in kind of like at this angle. I want to hold any point that is tense or tender for my client and hang out here for just a little while and see again if we get a little bit of a change in texture or a change in the amount of pressure or discomfort that our client feels. So we can sit here for about 30 seconds and see what's going on. If we get any change, then we're going to say we're making progress and we might try it again. All right. So quadriceps, either four muscles or one muscle with four heads. But either way you look at it, it's a great muscle to work on, particularly for our clients who are kind of desk sitters and end up a little bit bent over. Y'all have a great week and let me know in the comments how it goes working on quads.